Close your eyes and let your body sink into comfort. Take a slow, deep breath in and out. Tonight, we're going on a journey through time, exploring one of humanity's most fascinating questions. A question that challenges everything we think we know about our place in history. What if we're not the first? What if, long before our cities rose and our civilizations flourished, others walked this earth? What if the ground beneath our feet holds secrets we've only begun to glimpse? What if the story of human civilization is far older, far stranger, and far more mysterious than we've ever imagined? Let yourself relax as we explore these questions together. There's no rush, no urgency. Just wonder, curiosity, and the quiet contemplation of deep time. Let the weight of the day fall away as we journey into the distant past, where the boundaries between myth and memory begin to blur. Tonight, we'll walk through ancient ruins that shouldn't exist. We'll examine evidence that doesn't fit our timelines. We'll consider possibilities that challenge conventional wisdom. And through it all, you can simply listen, let go, and drift into peaceful rest. The journey begins now, in the twilight between waking and sleeping, where imagination and evidence intertwine. The impossible stone. In the highlands of Bolivia, at an altitude where the air itself seems thin and ancient, there stands a ruin that defies explanation. Puma Punku. The name means door of the puma in the local Aymara language, but what lies there is far more mysterious than any doorway. Imagine blocks of stone, some weighing over 100 tons, carved with such precision that modern engineers marvel at their construction. These aren't rough-hewn boulders stacked in primitive walls. These are perfectly cut blocks with intricate interlocking joints, smooth surfaces finished to tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters, and complex geometric patterns that suggest advanced mathematical knowledge. The stones fit together without mortar, so precisely that you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. Some blocks feature perfectly straight channels cut into their surfaces, intersecting at exact right angles. Others show evidence of drilling techniques that create smooth, circular holes through some of the hardest stone on Earth. According to mainstream archaeology, Puma Punku was built around 536 CE by the Tiwanaku civilization, using only stone hammers and copper chisels. But when modern stonemasons examine these blocks, they struggle to explain how such precision could be achieved with those tools. Some have tried to replicate the work using ancient techniques. The results don't come close to the precision found at Puma Punku. And here's what makes it even stranger. These massive stones were quarried from mountains 10 miles away, then somehow transported across difficult terrain, and assembled with clockwork precision at an altitude of nearly 13,000 feet. The logistics alone would challenge modern construction crews with trucks and cranes. But Puma Punku is just one mystery among thousands. All across our planet, scattered through jungles and deserts, buried beneath ocean waves and hidden under ice sheets, lie remnants of the past that don't quite fit our understanding of history. Each one whispers the same tantalizing question: what if we've been here before? As you settle deeper into comfort, let's explore this question together. Let's examine the evidence, consider the possibilities, and see where the mystery leads us. There's no conclusion to reach tonight, no answer you need to find. Just the gentle exploration of what might have been in the vast stretches of time before recorded history. The problem with deep time. Breathe slowly and evenly as we consider the nature of time itself. Deep time, geological time. The kind of time that stretches so far back that human civilization becomes barely a flicker in the long night of Earth's existence. Our planet is approximately 4.5 billion years old. That number is so large it becomes almost meaningless to our minds, which evolved to think in terms of days, seasons, and human lifespans. But try to imagine it anyway. 4.5 billion years of spinning through space, of continents forming and breaking apart, of oceans rising and falling, of life emerging and evolving and going extinct. For most of that time, there were no humans, no civilizations, no cities or tools or language. For billions of years, Earth was a world of simple life forms, of bacteria and algae, of primitive creatures crawling through ancient seas. Then, remarkably recently in geological terms, something changed. Complex life exploded across the planet. Fish evolved, then amphibians, then reptiles, then mammals. Dinosaurs ruled for hundreds of millions of years, then vanished in a cosmic instant when an asteroid struck the planet 66 million years ago. Our human ancestors emerged much, much later. The genus Homo appeared only about 2.5 million years ago. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have existed for perhaps 300,000 years, and what we call civilization, agriculture, cities, writing, organized societies, that's only about 12,000 years old at most. 12,000 years, a blink in the eye of deep time. Here's what makes this relevant to our question. We have excellent geological and fossil records going back hundreds of millions of years. We can trace the evolution of life through layer after layer of rock, reading Earth's history like pages in a book. But the further back we look, the more incomplete that book becomes. Pages are missing, whole chapters are gone, eroded away by time and geological processes. And here's the crucial point that often gets overlooked. The Earth itself is constantly recycling. Plate tectonics subduct ocean floor back into the mantle. Mountains rise and erode into dust. Glaciers advance and retreat, grinding everything beneath them into powder. Rivers carve through rock, removing entire landscapes. The planet is a dynamic, ever-changing system that destroys evidence as effectively as it preserves it. Consider the ocean floor. Most of it is less than 200 million years old because the older crust gets subducted beneath continental plates and recycled into the mantle. Any evidence of ancient civilizations that might have existed on those vast underwater plains is simply gone, consumed by geological processes and recycled into magma. Or consider ice ages. In the past 2.5 million years, there have been dozens of glacial periods where ice sheets kilometers thick advanced across much of the northern hemisphere. These glaciers scoured the landscape clean, removing soil, grinding down rock, and obliterating any surface features that existed before them. What evidence of human activity from 50,000 years ago would survive being ground under a mountain of ice? Now, let your mind wander through this deep time. Imagine a civilization that rose and fell not 12,000 years ago, but 50,000 years ago, or 100,000 years ago. What would remain? Their cities would have long since crumbled to dust. Their metals would have oxidized and corroded away. Their plastics, if they had such things, would have broken down into microparticles scattered across the globe. Their greatest monuments would have been weathered into unrecognizable lumps or ground into powder by advancing glaciers. Archaeologists working in the present day struggle to find evidence of human activity from just 20,000 years ago. Sites are rare, fragmentary, consisting mostly of the most durable artifacts, stone tools and occasionally bones in favorable preservation conditions. Everything else is gone. This is the problem with deep time. The Earth doesn't preserve most evidence. It destroys it. So, when we ask whether we might not be the first civilization, we're also asking a more difficult question. How would we even know? What evidence would survive such vast stretches of time? And more troublingly, what evidence might we be missing simply because the Earth has erased it from the record? There's a thought experiment that geophysicists sometimes discuss called the Silurian hypothesis, named not because there's any evidence of civilization in the Silurian period, but after a Doctor Who episode. The hypothesis asks, if an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years before humans, would we be able to detect it in the geological record? The answer is unsettling. Depending on when this hypothetical civilization existed and how long it lasted, we might not find any direct evidence at all. We might see only indirect traces, unusual spikes in certain isotopes, anomalous sediment layers, strange chemical signatures in ancient rocks, and we might easily miss those traces or interpret them as natural phenomena. This doesn't mean there was a civilization millions of years ago. The evidence strongly suggests there wasn't, but it illustrates how difficult it is to detect the traces of technological civilization in deep time, even when we know what to look for. Now, bring this forward to more recent times. Imagine a civilization that existed during the last ice age, when sea levels were 400 feet lower than today, and vast areas of what are now continental shelves were dry land. Millions of square miles of potentially habitable terrain that are now underwater. If that civilization built its cities on the coasts, as humans naturally do, every single one of those cities would now be submerged beneath hundreds of feet of ocean. Most would have been destroyed by rising seas at the end of the Ice Age, when massive floods inundated coastlines around the world. Any that survived intact would be covered in sediment, invisible from the surface, accessible only through expensive deep-water archaeology. We've explored perhaps 5% of the ocean floor in any detail. The rest remains as unknown to us as the surface of Mars. Somewhere in that vast, unexplored territory, could there be ruins we haven't found yet? Structures that would rewrite our understanding of human history? It's not impossible, just difficult to prove or disprove. As you breathe slowly and feel yourself relaxing deeper, hold this thought. The absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence. Sometimes the Earth simply doesn't preserve the story. Sometimes the pages are torn out. Sometimes deep time swallows everything, leaving only questions behind. And sometimes, just sometimes, something survives. Something anomalous, something that doesn't fit the narrative. A piece of the puzzle that suggests there might be more to the story than we know. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore some of those anomalies, strange artifacts and mysterious ruins that have puzzled researchers for generations. But for now, just rest. Let your breathing slow. Feel the comfort of where you lie. There's no hurry. The mysteries have waited thousands of years. They can wait a little longer while you drift towards sleep. Stones that shouldn't exist. Relax your shoulders. Let the tension drain away. As you rest comfortably, let's turn our attention to some of the most puzzling ancient structures on Earth. Monuments built with such precision and scale that they challenge our assumptions about the capabilities of ancient peoples. We'll start in Egypt, at the Giza Plateau, with a structure so famous that we often forget how truly anomalous it is. The Great Pyramid. You know the pyramid. Everyone knows the pyramid. But take a moment to really consider it. This structure contains approximately 2.5 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 70 tons. The blocks fit together so precisely that, in many places, you cannot slide a credit card between them. The base of the pyramid is level to within 2 centimeters across a distance of more than 200 meters. The sides are aligned to the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, to within a 1/20th of a degree. According to mainstream Egyptology, the Great Pyramid was built around 2560 BCE by Pharaoh Khufu's workers over a period of about 20 years. They supposedly quarried, transported, and precisely placed these massive blocks using copper tools, wooden sledges, and human labor. Let's do the mathematics. 2.5 million blocks in 20 years means placing approximately 340 blocks every single day, accounting for work stoppages due to floods, festivals, and other interruptions. That's one block placed every 2 minutes, working 10 hours a day, every day for 20 years. Now, placing a block isn't just dropping it into position. Each one must be quarried precisely from the bedrock, transported to the site, lifted into position, and fitted so perfectly that the joints are nearly invisible. Modern construction workers with power tools and cranes would find this schedule challenging. But perhaps more puzzling than the construction timeline is the precision. The Great Pyramid wasn't just large, it was geometrically sophisticated. The ratio of its perimeter to its height approximates 2 pi. The shafts inside align with specific stars. The structure encodes the dimensions of the Earth at a specific scale. Some researchers argue these features are intentional, demonstrating advanced mathematical and astronomical knowledge. Others say they're coincidental. Either way, the precision is undeniable, and precision requires tools. The granite blocks in the King's Chamber, transported from Aswan 500 miles away, show evidence of being cut and shaped with remarkable accuracy. Some researchers who've examined these blocks argue that the cutting marks are inconsistent with copper tools. They see evidence of tubular drilling that removes material at a rate far faster than copper chisels could achieve. They point to perfectly smooth surfaces that suggest more advanced finishing techniques. Mainstream archaeologists counter that ancient peoples were patient and skilled, that they used techniques we don't fully understand, and that, given enough time, precise work is possible with simple tools. They've performed experiments demonstrating that copper tools can cut granite, especially when combined with quartz sand as an abrasive. Both sides have points, but the mystery remains. Why haven't we found the tools? If hundreds of thousands of copper chisels were used to build the pyramids, where are they? Copper is valuable and would be recycled, but surely some would remain in the archaeological record. Yet the tools we've found are few and don't show the expected wear patterns. Let's drift now to Lebanon, to the ancient city of Baalbek. In the foundations of the Roman temple complex, there are stone blocks that dwarf anything found in Egypt. The largest, called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs approximately 1,000 tons. That's 1 million kilograms, 2 million pounds. This stone was quarried as a single block and transported to the temple site. But how? Even modern cranes struggle to lift loads of this magnitude. The largest mobile crane in the world today can lift about 2,200 tons, but it's a massive piece of equipment requiring extensive setup and support. The ancient engineers who moved this stone had no such equipment, yet they managed to transport it from the quarry, position it on the foundation, and place it with such precision that it fits seamlessly with the surrounding blocks. The engineering required is astonishing. Some researchers argue this demonstrates that ancient civilizations had access to technologies we've lost. Others suggest they used clever techniques involving lubricants, sledges, and large numbers of workers. The debate continues, but the stones remain, silent testimony to capabilities we struggle to explain. Now, let your mind travel to Peru, to the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, overlooking Cusco. Here, massive limestone blocks weighing up to 200 tons have been fitted together with such precision that the joints form complex, interlocking patterns. The blocks have irregular shapes, yet they fit together perfectly, forming walls that have withstood centuries of earthquakes in a seismically active region. How did the builders achieve this? Each block is unique, with a shape that corresponds exactly to the blocks around it. This means the stonemasons either planned the entire wall in advance with incredible precision or fitted each stone individually, somehow knowing how to shape it so it would interlock perfectly with its neighbors. The latter seems more likely, but it's still remarkably difficult. Modern stonemasons attempting to replicate these walls have found the work extremely challenging, even with power tools and modern measuring devices. The precision required to shape irregular stones so they fit together seamlessly is extraordinary. And consider the scale. These aren't small garden walls. Sacsayhuaman's walls stretch for hundreds of meters and rise to heights of 15 feet or more. Thousands of these irregular, perfectly fitted blocks were shaped and placed to create this fortress. The Inca, who occupied Cusco when the Spanish arrived, told the conquistadors they didn't build Sacsayhuaman. They said it was built by people who came before them, using techniques they themselves didn't understand. Spanish chroniclers recorded these statements, though modern archaeology attributes the construction to Inca engineers around the 15th century. But there's an interesting detail. The finest, most precisely fitted stonework in Inca sites is found in the oldest layers. The later Inca construction, while impressive, doesn't achieve the same level of precision. It's as if the technique was being lost over time, rather than refined. This is counterintuitive. Usually, technologies improve with practice. But at sites like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo, the oldest work is the most sophisticated. This has led some researchers to wonder if the Inca were building on foundations laid by an earlier culture, perhaps refurbishing and adding to structures they themselves didn't originally create. Mainstream archaeology largely rejects this idea, attributing all the construction to Inca engineers. But the question lingers: why does the quality of stonework seem to decline over time at these sites? Let's move now to the ocean, off the coast of Japan, where an even stranger anomaly lies beneath the waves. The Yonaguni Monument, discovered in 1987 by a dive instructor, is a massive rock formation featuring apparently artificial features: straight edges, right angles, flat platforms, and what appear to be steps and terraces. The structure sits at depths between 5 and 40 meters. Its features are striking: long, straight walls meeting at precise angles, flat terraces like roadways, carved-looking pillars, and a formation that resembles a ziggurat or stepped pyramid. The question that immediately arose was, is it natural or artificial. Geologists who've examined the site are divided. Some argue that the features are entirely natural, the result of tectonic activity and erosion along the natural fracture planes of the sandstone. They point out that sandstone often fractures in straight lines and right angles due to its internal structure, and that underwater erosion can create features that look artificial. Other researchers, particularly marine geologist Masaki Kimura, who has studied the site extensively, argue that some features are too regular, too symmetrical, and too organized to be entirely natural. They point to features like apparent tool marks, symmetrically arranged holes, and a peculiar carved animal figure that looks like it might be a turtle. If Yonaguni is artificial, even partially, it would be extraordinary. The last time the site was above water was at the end of the last ice age, over 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower. This would mean it was built before the rise of any known civilization in that region, predating Japanese history by thousands of years. Most geologists remain skeptical, seeing the formation as a natural curiosity. But the debate continues, and Yonaguni remains one of the most interesting underwater sites in the world, whether it's ancient ruins or a remarkable geological formation. As you rest, feeling comfortable and relaxed, consider what these structures represent. They're not evidence of lost, super-advanced civilizations necessarily, but they are evidence of remarkable capabilities. Ancient peoples, whether 10,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, achieved feats of engineering and precision that impress us today. The question isn't whether they were capable of great works. Clearly they were. The question is whether we fully understand how they did it, and whether our timeline of human technological development is as complete as we think. Because for every monument we can explain, there are details that don't quite fit, tools we haven't found, techniques we can't replicate, timelines that seem too short, precision that seems too great for the proposed methods. These anomalies don't prove alternative histories, but they do suggest that the story might be more complex, more interesting, and more mysterious than our textbooks acknowledge. In the next section, we'll explore what happens when we dig even deeper, when we find artifacts that truly don't fit anywhere in our understanding of history. Objects that seem impossibly old, impossibly sophisticated, or impossibly out of place. But for now, just breathe. Let these thoughts drift through your mind like clouds across a peaceful sky. There's no urgency, no anxiety, just wonder and curiosity as we explore the mysteries of the ancient world together. Objects out of time. Let yourself sink deeper into relaxation as we explore some of the most controversial artifacts ever discovered. These are objects that, if genuine, would completely upend our understanding of technological history. Objects that appear in layers of rock where they shouldn't exist, displaying knowledge that cultures of their time supposedly didn't possess. Archaeologists call them out-of-place artifacts, or OOP arts. Skeptics often call them hoaxes, misidentifications, or misunderstood natural formations. The truth, as usual, is complex and requires careful examination. Let's start with one of the most famous examples, the Antikythera mechanism. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera discovered an ancient shipwreck containing statues, pottery, and a corroded lump of bronze that would remain a mystery for decades. The lump sat in a museum, largely ignored, until scholars began to realize what it contained: gears. Dozens of precisely cut bronze gears locked in a complex arrangement. As researchers carefully studied the mechanism using X-rays and later CT scans, they uncovered something astonishing. This wasn't just a collection of gears. It was a sophisticated astronomical calculator designed to predict the positions of celestial bodies, the timing of eclipses, and possibly the dates of Olympic Games. The gearing was so complex that some have called it the world's first analog computer. The mechanism dates to around 100 BCE, placing it firmly in the ancient Greek world. But here's what makes it so remarkable. Nothing else like it appears in the historical record for over 1,000 years. The level of sophisticated gear cutting and mechanical engineering demonstrated by the Antikythera mechanism wouldn't be seen again until medieval astronomical clocks. It's as if someone in ancient Greece possessed knowledge and manufacturing capabilities that were then completely forgotten, only to be slowly rediscovered more than a millennium later. The mechanism proves that ancient Greek engineering was far more sophisticated than we previously believed. It raises uncomfortable questions. What else did they build that we haven't found? What other knowledge was lost? The Antikythera mechanism is accepted by mainstream archaeology because we have the physical object. We know its provenance, and we've been able to study it extensively. It's not controversial to say it's real. What's controversial is what it implies about lost knowledge and technological discontinuity in human history. Now, let's consider more contentious examples. In 1938, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig examined artifacts in the Baghdad Museum from ancient Mesopotamia. Among them were clay jars dating to around 200 BCE to 200 CE, containing copper cylinders and iron rods. When Koenig studied the construction, he noticed something peculiar. The arrangement looked remarkably similar to a galvanic cell, a primitive battery. The Baghdad battery, as it became known, sparked debate that continues today. Could ancient peoples have discovered electrical current? Some researchers constructed replicas and demonstrated that the jars could indeed produce a small electrical voltage when filled with acidic liquid like vinegar or wine. What would such a device have been used for? One theory suggests electroplating, the process of using electrical current to deposit a thin layer of metal onto objects. Some ancient artifacts show evidence of gold plating so thin and uniform that electroplating is a plausible explanation. But most archaeologists remain skeptical. They argue the jars were more likely used for storing scrolls or holding ritual items. The electrical properties, they say, are coincidental, without clear evidence of how the ancients would have understood or utilized electrical current. The battery interpretation remains speculative. The Baghdad battery illustrates a key challenge in evaluating OOP arts. Context matters enormously. An object that could function as a battery isn't proof it was used as one. We need corroborating evidence, texts describing electricity, other electrical devices, evidence of electroplating techniques. Without that context, we're left with an intriguing possibility, but not a definitive answer. Let's travel now to South America, to a region rich with controversial artifacts. In the Ica region of Peru, thousands of stones have been found bearing carved images. These stones, called the Ica stones, depict a wide variety of scenes: surgical procedures, dinosaurs, maps, and humans interacting with creatures that look like sauropods. The most controversial stones appear to show humans coexisting with dinosaurs, which would be impossible since dinosaurs went extinct 66 million years ago, million years before humans evolved. If genuine and correctly interpreted, these stones would demolish everything we know about paleontology and human history. The problem is provenance. Most Ica stones come from private collections, purchased from local farmers who claim to have found them. Very few have been recovered in controlled archaeological contexts. In the 1970s, the Peruvian government investigated whether the stones were hoaxes, and local residents admitted to carving them for sale to tourists. However, some defenders of the stones argue that locals only admitted to forgery to avoid prosecution under Peruvian laws protecting archaeological artifacts. They point to a few stones that were recovered in documented archaeological contexts and to the sheer number of stones, arguing it would be nearly impossible for modern forgers to create so many in the time available. The scientific consensus is clear. The Ica stones are modern forgeries. The depictions of dinosaurs are based on 20th century paleontological reconstructions, not on any ancient knowledge. The stones serve as a cautionary tale about the importance of provenance and the ease with which artifacts can be faked. Yet the controversy persists in popular culture, fueled by books and documentaries that present the stones uncritically as evidence of ancient advanced knowledge. This illustrates another challenge. Once a story enters popular consciousness, it becomes very difficult to dislodge, even when the evidence doesn't support it. Let's consider another category of anomaly: ancient maps that seem to show geographic knowledge that shouldn't exist. The Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, shows the Atlantic Ocean with the coasts of Europe, Africa, and South America. What's remarkable is that portions of the map appear to show the coastline of Antarctica, which wouldn't be officially discovered for another 300 years. Some researchers argue the map proves ancient civilizations possess sophisticated geographic knowledge, perhaps even aerial surveying capabilities. They claim the Antarctic coastline is depicted as it would look without ice, suggesting the map is based on much older source maps from when Antarctica was ice-free thousands of years ago. Mainstream historians and cartographers see the situation differently. They point out that the supposed Antarctic coastline more likely represents a distorted depiction of South America's southern coast. Renaissance maps often contained errors and speculative geography. The map's accuracy for some regions can be explained by Piri Reis's use of contemporary charts, including possibly Columbus's own maps. Moreover, Antarctica has been ice-covered for millions of years, far longer than modern humans have existed. For the map to show an ice-free Antarctica based on ancient sources, those sources would have to predate humanity itself, which creates obvious logical problems. The Piri Reis map is genuine. We have the original document. But the interpretation that it shows Antarctica remains highly disputed and not accepted by most experts in cartography and history. These examples share a common thread. They're objects or documents that genuinely exist, but whose interpretation is controversial. The debates around them often reflect deeper questions about how we evaluate evidence, how we distinguish between alternative explanations, and what level of proof we require before accepting extraordinary claims. The Antikythera mechanism reminds us that ancient peoples were capable of remarkable sophistication, and that our assumptions about technological history can be wrong. It was once thought impossible that ancient Greeks could build such a device. Now we know they could, and it forces us to reconsider what else they might have achieved. The Baghdad battery reminds us that superficial similarity doesn't prove function. Something that looks like a battery and could work as a battery still might not have been used as a battery. The Ica stones remind us to be skeptical of artifacts with questionable provenance and to consider Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is often correct. Modern hoaxes are far more likely than ancient humans coexisting with dinosaurs. The Piri Reis map reminds us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that our interpretation of historical documents must be tempered by what we know from other fields like geology and climatology. As you rest comfortably, breathing slowly and evenly, consider this. The question isn't just whether anomalous artifacts exist. Some clearly do, like the Antikythera mechanism. The real questions are more subtle. How do we distinguish genuine anomalies from hoaxes and misinterpretations? When we find something that doesn't fit our historical models, do we revise our models or reconsider the artifact? And how do we balance open-minded inquiry with appropriate skepticism? These aren't easy questions, and they don't have simple answers, but wrestling with them is part of how we refine our understanding of the past. Every genuine mystery, properly investigated, teaches us something, whether it confirms our existing knowledge or reveals gaps in our understanding. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore what happens when we look not at objects, but at knowledge itself. What did ancient peoples know? Did they possess scientific understanding that seems out of place for their time? And if so, how did they acquire it? But there's no rush to answer these questions tonight. Let them drift through your mind as you relax deeper, feeling the comfort of rest, the gentle pull towards sleep. The mysteries have waited this long. They'll wait a little longer while you find peace. Ancient knowledge. Breathe deeply and let your mind wander through the corridors of ancient libraries, now long vanished, where knowledge was gathered and preserved. As you relax, we'll explore what ancient peoples knew and how they knew it. One of the most striking things about early civilizations is how much they understood about the cosmos. Without telescopes, without sophisticated mathematics, without modern physics, ancient astronomers mapped the heavens with remarkable precision. The Babylonians tracked planetary movements and predicted eclipses with accuracy that wouldn't be surpassed for thousands of years. They understood that Venus's morning and evening appearances were the same planet. They knew the orbital periods of the visible planets. They developed sophisticated mathematical models to predict celestial events. How did they achieve this? Patient observation over centuries, careful record keeping, and the recognition of patterns. The Babylonians didn't need to understand gravity or orbital mechanics in the modern sense. They simply needed to watch, measure, and record. Given enough time, the patterns emerge. The ancient Egyptians aligned their pyramids to true north with incredible precision. They tracked the heliacal rising of Sirius, using it to predict the annual flooding of the Nile. They recognized that the year was approximately 365 days long, and developed a calendar that, while imperfect, served them well for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks went further. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy around 240 BCE. His method was elegant. He knew that at noon on the summer solstice in Syene, modern Aswan, the sun was directly overhead, casting no shadow. At the same moment in Alexandria, 800 kilometers to the north, the sun cast a shadow, indicating it was about 7 degrees off vertical. Using geometry, Eratosthenes reasoned that 7 degrees is about 1/50th of a circle, so the distance between the two cities must be about 1/50th of Earth's circumference. His calculation was remarkably close to the actual value. Not bad for someone working over 2,000 years ago, with no instruments beyond a stick that cast shadows. Aristarchus of Samos proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system, with Earth revolving around the sun. In the 3rd century BCE, nearly 2,000 years before Copernicus. His model wasn't widely accepted, but it demonstrates that the ancients were capable of sophisticated cosmological thinking. The ancient Indians developed advanced mathematics, including the concept of zero and negative numbers, sophisticated algorithms, and early forms of calculus. Indian astronomers understood that the Earth rotated on its axis. They calculated the lengths of celestial orbits with impressive precision. In the Americas, the Maya developed a calendar system of extraordinary complexity and accuracy. They tracked not just the solar year, but also the lunar month, the synodic period of Venus, and other celestial cycles. Their long-count calendar could track dates across thousands of years. They understood the concept of zero independently of old-world mathematicians. Mayan astronomers predicted eclipses. They knew the length of the solar year to within seconds of the modern value. They did all this without metal tools, without telescopes, without the accumulated scientific knowledge of the old world. They developed their understanding through careful observation, mathematical sophistication, and cultural continuity that preserved knowledge across generations. These examples show that ancient peoples were fully capable of sophisticated scientific and mathematical thinking. They didn't need to be taught by lost civilizations or ancient astronauts. They needed only intelligence, curiosity, and time. But here's where things get interesting. Some ancient knowledge is harder to explain through patient observation alone. Consider the Antikythera mechanism we discussed earlier. The mechanical knowledge required to design and build such a device isn't just observational. It requires understanding gear ratios, mechanical advantage, and the translation of rotational motion into calculated outputs. It requires precision machining, probably using techniques like the bow drill to cut gear teeth. This level of mechanical sophistication had to have a developmental history. You don't jump from simple tools directly to complex geared mechanisms. There must have been earlier, simpler mechanical devices that taught craftsmen the principles they needed. But we haven't found those intermediate devices. The archaeological record shows us the Antikythera mechanism as a kind of mechanical island connected to nothing else in its time period. Where did the knowledge come from? The most likely answer is that we simply haven't found the other devices yet. The Antikythera mechanism survived only by accident, protected in a shipwreck. How many similar devices existed but weren't preserved? How many were recycled for their valuable bronze? How many corroded away to nothing in terrestrial environments? The absence of evidence for other sophisticated mechanisms doesn't mean they didn't exist. It might just mean they didn't survive. Bronze and iron corrode. Wood rots. Only in exceptional circumstances do such artifacts survive for 2,000 years. But the Antikythera mechanism does raise a troubling question. How much knowledge has been lost? How many capabilities did ancient peoples possess that left no trace in the archaeological record? Consider the Library of Alexandria. At its height, It may have contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls, representing much of the accumulated knowledge of the ancient Mediterranean world. When the library was destroyed, gradually, over several incidents spanning centuries, that knowledge was lost. Some texts survived in copies elsewhere, but many disappeared entirely. We know the titles of hundreds of ancient works that are completely lost. We have fragments, references in other texts, tantalizing hints about what they contained. But the actual documents are gone. What was in them? What did ancient scholars know that we've had to rediscover? The Romans had concrete that could cure underwater and has proven more durable than modern concrete in marine environments. The recipe was lost for over 1,000 years. We've only recently figured out how they made it, discovering that volcanic ash was a key ingredient and that the concrete actually gets stronger over time through chemical reactions with seawater. Damascus steel, renowned for its strength and distinctive wavy pattern, was produced using techniques that were eventually lost. Modern metallurgists have theories about how it was made, but we're not entirely certain. The knowledge died with the craftsmen who possessed it. Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's secret weapon, was an incendiary compound that burned on water and couldn't be extinguished by conventional means. It gave the Byzantine navy a devastating tactical advantage, but the formula was such a closely guarded secret that eventually it was lost entirely. We still don't know exactly what Greek fire was made of, though we have theories involving petroleum, quicklime, and sulfur. These examples illustrate an important point. Knowledge isn't automatically preserved. It can be lost surprisingly easily, especially when it's held by a small group of specialists. When those specialists die without passing on their knowledge, when political upheavals destroy institutions of learning, when economic changes make certain crafts obsolete, the knowledge can vanish in a single generation. This raises a fascinating possibility. If civilizations in our recorded history lost significant knowledge, could earlier peoples have possessed knowledge that was subsequently lost entirely? Could there have been understanding of mathematics, astronomy, engineering, or materials science that disappeared before written records could preserve it? It's not impossible, but it would require that knowledge to have been developed, which requires infrastructure, institutions, and cultural continuity. Knowledge doesn't arise spontaneously. It's built gradually through observation, experimentation, and the transmission of learning from masters to students. For a civilization to develop advanced knowledge and then lose it completely, that civilization would need to have existed long enough to accumulate the knowledge, then disappeared so thoroughly that no trace remained except perhaps a few puzzling artifacts or monuments. Is there any evidence that this happened? Some researchers argue yes, pointing to the monuments we discussed earlier, to myths of golden ages and lost wisdom, to the sophisticated knowledge encoded in ancient astronomical alignments. Others argue no, pointing to the lack of clear, unambiguous evidence for such civilizations in the archaeological and geological record. The debate continues. But what's undeniable is that ancient peoples were sophisticated observers and thinkers. They developed remarkable understanding of the world around them, and sometimes, tragically, that understanding was lost, forcing later generations to rediscover what their ancestors once knew. As you rest here, breathing slowly, consider the fragility of knowledge. Consider how much we take for granted the accumulated wisdom of centuries, preserved now in books and databases, but once held only in human memory and handwritten manuscripts. One library fire, one political collapse, one generation that failed to teach the next, and knowledge vanishes like smoke. Perhaps that's the real mystery. Not whether advanced ancient civilizations existed, but how much knowledge we've lost from the civilizations we know did exist. What did the scholars of Babylon know that we're only now rediscovering? What did Egyptian architects understand about construction that we've had to relearn? What wisdom vanished with the burning of the Library of Alexandria? These questions don't require lost super-civilizations to be profound. They remind us that human knowledge is precious and fragile, that each generation builds on what came before, and that when that chain is broken, we must begin again, slowly reconstructing what was lost. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore the myths and legends that speak of ancient times, of floods and catastrophes, of golden ages and lost lands. Are these stories merely fiction, or do they preserve memories of real events, distorted by time and retelling into mythological form? But, for now, rest easy. Let these thoughts settle gently in your mind. There's no urgency to solve these mysteries tonight, just the peaceful contemplation of deep questions as you drift towards sleep. Myths and memories. Allow your breathing to become even more relaxed as we explore the boundary between myth and memory, where ancient stories might preserve fragments of forgotten history. Every culture on Earth has flood myths, stories of great deluges that destroyed the world, forcing survivors to rebuild civilization. The similarities across cultures separated by oceans and continents are striking. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, warned by the gods of a coming flood, who builds an ark to save his family and animals. The story dates to at least 2100 BCE and is strikingly similar to the later biblical account of Noah's Ark. In Hindu tradition, Manu is warned by a fish about an impending flood. He builds a boat, survives the deluge, and becomes the progenitor of mankind. Greek mythology tells of Deucalion, who survived a flood sent by Zeus to destroy humanity. He and his wife Pyrrha repopulate the earth. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have flood myths too. The Aztecs spoke of multiple worlds destroyed by water. Native American tribes from the Pacific Northwest to the Amazon basin have flood traditions. In Australia, Aboriginal oral traditions speak of times when the seas rose and swallowed the land. Are these myths just coincidental? Are they archetypes that emerge naturally from the human psyche, as some psychologists argue? Or do they preserve memories of real events? Here's where geology becomes interesting. At the end of the last ice age, approximately 11,700 years ago, the planet underwent dramatic climate change. Massive ice sheets that had covered much of North America and Europe melted rapidly. Sea levels rose by approximately 400 feet over several thousand years. That might sound gradual, but it wasn't a smooth process. The melting happened in fits and starts, with periods of stability punctuated by rapid changes. Some events were catastrophic. Around 8,000 years ago, the Laurentide ice sheet, which covered much of Canada, collapsed catastrophically. Massive lakes of meltwater that had been trapped behind ice dams suddenly burst forth, flooding into the North Atlantic. The volume of water released was staggering, equivalent to all the water in all the Great Lakes draining in a matter of weeks or months. This event, called the 8.2 kilo-year event, caused global climate disruption. Temperatures dropped. Ocean circulation patterns changed. Coastlines were inundated. Any human settlements near these coasts would have been destroyed, and humans were definitely living near these coasts. During the Ice Age, when sea levels were lower, the continental shelves were dry land. These areas would have been attractive to human settlement, close to marine resources, with flat terrain suitable for habitation. Many of these areas are now hundreds of feet underwater. The flooding at the end of the Ice Age would have been traumatic for coastal populations. Over generations and centuries, rising seas would have forced them to retreat inland, abandoning settlements, losing territory. Major flooding events would have been catastrophic, destroying communities in days or weeks. If you were a survivor of such an event, wouldn't you tell your children about it? Wouldn't the story be passed down through generations? And over thousands of years, wouldn't those stories take on mythological dimensions, with the scale of the catastrophe growing larger with each retelling, with gods and supernatural elements added to explain the inexplicable? This is one theory for the origin of flood myths. They are cultural memories of real events at the end of the Ice Age, preserved through oral tradition and transformed into mythology over millennia. It's a compelling theory, but difficult to prove. Oral traditions can preserve accurate information for long periods. Aboriginal Australian songlines demonstrably preserve accurate geographical information for thousands of years. But they can also distort, embellish, and merge different events into single narratives. Still, the flood myths hint at something important, that human history extends further back than our written records suggest, and that traumatic events from that deep past might be preserved in distorted form in our oldest stories. Let's consider another persistent myth, the lost continent. Plato wrote about Atlantis around 360 BCE, describing an advanced island civilization that sank beneath the waves after failing to conquer Athens. Plato's account was likely allegorical, a moral tale about hubris and divine justice rather than a historical record. Most scholars interpret it as fiction, But the story of Atlantis has captured imaginations for millennia, spawning countless books, theories, and searches for the lost continent. Some researchers have proposed that Atlantis was actually Santorini, the Greek island devastated by a massive volcanic eruption around 1600 BCE. Others have placed it everywhere from Antarctica to the Americas to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean itself. The problem with most Atlantis theories is geological. There is no sunken continent in the Atlantic Ocean. We've mapped the ocean floor extensively, and while there are underwater plateaus and seamounts, there's no massive landmass that recently sank. Continental crust doesn't just disappear, it's lighter than oceanic crust and floats on the mantle. For a continent to sink, you'd need geological mechanisms that don't exist. But could Atlantis have been inspired by a real place? Possibly. The Minoan civilization on Crete and the surrounding islands was sophisticated and powerful. The eruption of Thera, Santorini, would have generated massive tsunamis that devastated coastal settlements. From the perspective of Bronze Age peoples, it might have seemed like an entire civilization had been swallowed by the sea. Or Atlantis might be pure fiction, Plato's philosophical thought experiment given geographical form. We may never know. Other cultures have their own versions of lost lands. Irish mythology speaks of Hy Brasil, a phantom island that appeared and disappeared. Welsh legend tells of Cantrair Gwaelod, a lowland kingdom inundated by the sea. Tamil literature references Kumari Kandam, a continent south of India that was swallowed by the ocean. These stories might all be fiction, or they might preserve memories of real places lost to rising seas at the end of the Ice Age. The Tamil story is particularly interesting because there was indeed land south of India during the Ice Age. The continental shelf was exposed when sea levels were lower. That land is now underwater. Could the myth of Kumari Kandam be a cultural memory of losing that territory? It's speculative, but not impossible. Now, let yourself drift deeper as we consider another category of myth: stories of ancient wise beings who taught humanity the arts of civilization. The Sumerians spoke of the Apkallu, 7 sages who emerged from the sea before the flood to teach humanity writing, mathematics, agriculture, and architecture. After the flood, they returned to the waters. Egyptian traditions referred to the Shemsu Hor, followers of Horus, who were said to have ruled Egypt in pre-dynastic times, possessing great wisdom and establishing the foundations of Egyptian civilization. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl was remembered as a wise teacher who brought knowledge to the people before departing across the sea, promising to return. These stories of civilizing heroes appear across cultures. They might be purely mythological, archetypes of wisdom and teaching personified as characters, or they might reflect something more concrete, memories of real teachers, innovators, or foreign visitors who brought new technologies and ideas to societies. The spread of agriculture, metalworking, and other technologies didn't happen everywhere simultaneously. They diffused from centers of innovation to other regions, carried by migrants, traders, or conquerors. From the perspective of the receiving culture, the arrival of people with superior technology might well be remembered as the coming of wise teachers from far away. But some researchers speculate more dramatically. What if these myths remember an actual earlier civilization that possessed advanced knowledge and transmitted it to the hunter-gatherers and early agriculturalists who were just beginning to develop their own civilizations? This is the lost civilization hypothesis in its strongest form, that there was an advanced civilization during or before the last ice age, that it was destroyed by climate catastrophe or other disasters, and that survivors transmitted some of their knowledge to other peoples before disappearing, leaving only myths and a few enigmatic monuments. The hypothesis is intriguing, but faces significant challenges. First, where's the clear physical evidence? An advanced civilization would leave traces, ruins, artifacts, chemical signatures and sediment layers, evidence of agriculture or animal domestication, changes in the archaeological record of the peoples they supposedly taught. We do find discontinuities in the archaeological record, sudden appearances of new technologies, unexplained advances. But these can usually be explained by the normal processes of cultural development, innovation, and the incompleteness of the archaeological record. Absence of evidence for gradual development doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't gradual development. It might just mean we haven't found the evidence yet. Second, genetics. Modern genetic studies can trace human migrations and population, mixing with increasing precision. If there was a significant interaction between a lost civilization and the ancestors of modern populations, we should see genetic signatures of that interaction. So far, the genetic evidence shows the patterns we'd expect from conventional human history. Migrations out of Africa, gradual population expansions, mixing between groups when they encountered each other. No mysterious lost population has shown up in the DNA record. Third, climate and geological data. Ice cores, ocean sediments, and other paleoclimate records give us a detailed picture of Earth's climate over hundreds of thousands of years. These records show natural climate variability, ice ages and interglacials, but nothing that suggests massive technological civilization. No unusual pollution signatures, no anomalous carbon emissions, no evidence of widespread deforestation or agriculture before the expected timeframes. These arguments don't conclusively disprove the lost civilization hypothesis, but they do make it seem unlikely. The evidence we have is better explained by conventional archaeology. Human civilization developed gradually, emerging from hunter-gatherer societies as agriculture was independently invented in several regions, leading to the rise of the civilizations we know from recorded history. But the myths remain, tantalizing and mysterious. Even if they don't record literal lost civilizations, they tell us something important about how humans remember the past, how traumatic events echo through generations, and how the boundaries between history and legend can blur over thousands of years. As you rest here, letting these thoughts wash over you like gentle waves, consider the power of story. For most of human existence, we had no writing. History was preserved orally, through tales told around fires, through songs and poems passed from elder to child. Some of those stories might reach back unimaginably far, carrying fragments of truth wrapped in layers of mythological elaboration. We may never know exactly what truth, if any, lies at the heart of our oldest myths. But the fact that we still tell these stories, still wonder about lost civilizations and ancient floods, suggests something deep in human nature, a sense that there's more to our past than we can fully grasp, that the mists of time conceal mysteries we've not yet solved. In the next section, we'll turn our attention to the Earth itself, to what geology tells us about the stability of our planet and what catastrophes have shaped human history. Because if earlier civilizations did exist and were destroyed, we need to understand what might have destroyed them. But that can wait. For now, just breathe. Let yourself relax more deeply. Feel the comfort of where you rest. The mysteries are patient. They'll still be there when you're ready, or they'll fade gently into dreams as sleep overtakes you. The unstable planet. Breathe slowly and deeply as we explore the dynamic, sometimes violent nature of the planet we inhabit. Let yourself remain comfortable and relaxed as we examine forces that have shaped the Earth and influenced human history. We tend to think of the Earth as stable, unchanging in human timescales. The mountains stand where they've always stood. The continents rest in their ancient positions. The climate cycles through predictable seasons. But this stability is an illusion born of our brief lives. On geological timescales, the Earth is restless, constantly changing, occasionally violent. Consider earthquakes. Every year, hundreds of thousands of earthquakes occur worldwide. Most are tiny, detectable only by sensitive instruments, but some are catastrophic. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, magnitude 9.1, shifted the Earth's axis of rotation and changed the length of the day by microseconds. The tsunami it generated killed over 230,000 people across 14 countries. That earthquake released energy equivalent to 475 megatons of TNT, thousands of times more than the largest nuclear weapons ever tested. And it wasn't an anomaly. Magnitude 9 earthquakes occur somewhere on Earth roughly once every decade or two. Smaller, but still devastating earthquakes happen far more frequently. Now imagine being an ancient civilization without our understanding of plate tectonics. without seismographs to provide warning, without the ability to build earthquake-resistant structures. A major earthquake could destroy your capital city in seconds. Your temples, your libraries, your accumulated knowledge, gone in an instant. History records many civilizations disrupted or destroyed by earthquakes. The Minoan Palace at Knossos shows evidence of earthquake damage. The ancient city of Pompeii was damaged by an earthquake 17 years before Vesuvius buried it. The city of Port Royal, Jamaica, called the wickedest city on earth in the 17th century, sank into the harbor during an earthquake in 1692. If earthquakes can devastate modern cities with our engineering knowledge and disaster response capabilities, what could they do to ancient civilizations? How much has been lost to seismic activity over the millennia? Volcanic eruptions present another form of catastrophic change. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE famously buried Pompeii and Herculaneum, but that was a relatively small eruption compared to what Earth is capable of. The eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia in 1815 was so massive it affected global climate, creating the year without a summer in 1816. Crops failed across the northern hemisphere, snow fell in summer, tens of thousands died of starvation and disease. Going further back, the Toba supervolcano erupted about 74,000 years ago, with such violence that it may have created a volcanic winter lasting years. Some researchers argue this eruption caused a population bottleneck in human evolution, reducing humanity to perhaps 10,000 individuals. The genetic evidence for such a bottleneck is debated, but the eruption itself was undeniably catastrophic. Supervolcanic eruptions occur roughly every 50,000 years on average. The last one was 26,500 years ago in New Zealand. We're not overdue for another, but it could happen tomorrow. When it does, it will affect global civilization severely. What would such an eruption do to a less technologically advanced civilization? Could it erase one entirely from history? Then there are tsunamis. We've already mentioned the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Historical records describe others. The tsunami that struck Japan in 1700, generated by an earthquake off the coast of North America. The waves that devastated the Mediterranean after the Thera eruption around 1600 BCE. The tsunami that struck Alexandria in 365 CE, destroying much of the ancient city. Tsunamis can strike coastlines with little warning, traveling at hundreds of miles per hour across open ocean, rising to heights of 100 feet when they reach shallow water. Coastal cities, where people naturally congregate for trade and access to marine resources, are uniquely vulnerable. If human civilizations have always tended to build near coasts, and coasts are periodically devastated by tsunamis, how many settlements have been destroyed over the centuries? At the end of the last ice age, when sea levels rose and coastlines were in flux, the impacts would have been even more severe. Climate change operates on longer timescales, but can be equally devastating. We're experiencing human-caused climate change now, but the Earth's climate has always varied naturally. Ice ages come and go, driven by variations in Earth's orbit and tilt. Within ice ages and interglacials, there are shorter-term variations, periods of cooling and warming that can span decades or centuries. The medieval warm period, roughly 950 to 1250 CE, saw warmer temperatures across the North Atlantic region. This enabled Norse colonization of Greenland and possibly brief expeditions to North America. Then came the Little Ice Age, from about 1300 to 1850, bringing colder temperatures, crop failures, famines, and social upheaval. These relatively minor climate variations affected human societies significantly. Now, imagine the transition from the last ice age to our current interglacial period. Over several thousand years, the climate warmed dramatically. Ice sheets miles thick melted away. Sea levels rose 400 feet. Entire ecosystems shifted hundreds of miles north or south as temperature zones migrated. Coastlines were inundated. Rivers changed course. Forests gave way to grasslands or vice versa. Any human societies adapted to Ice Age conditions would have had to migrate, adapt, or perish. Some populations thrived. The warmer climate allowed agriculture to develop. but others might have struggled, especially coastal populations facing rising seas and changing marine ecosystems. The Younger Dryas period, about 12,800 to 11,600 years ago, saw a sudden return to near glacial conditions in the midst of the general warming trend. Temperatures plummeted. The climate crisis lasted over a millennium before warming resumed. What caused it remains debated. Changes in ocean circulation, volcanic eruptions, possibly an asteroid or comet impact. Whatever the cause, it would have been catastrophic for populations just beginning to adapt to warmer conditions. Some researchers argue that a comet impact or airburst around 12,900 years ago triggered the Younger Dryas cooling. They point to a layer of sediment from that time containing unusual materials, nanodiamonds, magnetic spherules, and other markers possibly indicative of an extraterrestrial impact. This remains controversial. Many geologists argue the markers can be explained by natural processes like wildfires and don't require an impact. But whether or not there was an impact, the Younger Dryas was real, and it was abrupt. Climate records from ice cores show temperature changes happening within decades, perhaps even faster. Imagine the social disruption. A warming world suddenly plunged back into cold, growing seasons shortened, animal populations migrating or declining, coastal areas still flooding as ice continued to melt despite the cold. Could a relatively advanced society, adapted to the warming trend, have been devastated by such rapid change? Could knowledge have been lost, populations scattered, forcing survivors to rebuild from a lower technological level? It's speculative, but not impossible. We know climate change can collapse civilizations. It's happened in recorded history. The drought that may have contributed to the fall of the Akkadian Empire around 2200 BCE. The climate shifts that disrupted Mayan civilization. The famines that weakened late Bronze Age societies. If climate change can stress or destroy civilizations in historical times, with agriculture and trade networks and written records, what could it do to earlier societies without those advantages? As you rest here, breathing slowly, consider the fragility of civilization. We build on stable foundations, but the foundations themselves are not stable. The Earth moves beneath us, slowly on human time scales, but with catastrophic suddenness in geological time. A single earthquake can level a city. A volcanic eruption can disrupt global climate. A tsunami can sweep away coastal settlements. Climate change can turn farmland to desert or bury forests under ice. Asteroid impacts, though rare, can cause extinction-level events. We live in a geologically quiet time. The Holocene, our current epoch, has been unusually stable for the past 11,000 years. This stability allowed civilization to flourish, but it's not guaranteed to continue. The Earth is dynamic. Catastrophe is not only possible, but inevitable, given enough time. This doesn't mean lost civilizations were destroyed by catastrophes, but it does mean we should appreciate how fortunate we are to live in a stable period and remember that stability is temporary. The Earth has been here for 4.5 billion years. It will be here long after human civilization, however long we endure. And if catastrophes can challenge us, with all our technology and scientific understanding, what could they do to peoples with less? How much could be lost in a single generation if disaster struck at the right moment? How much might have already been lost in events too ancient for recorded history? These are questions without easy answers, but they frame the mystery we're exploring. If we're looking for evidence of earlier civilizations, we must also consider what evidence would survive and what might have been destroyed by the same forces that continue to shape our planet today. In the next section, we'll explore what archaeologists are actually finding as they investigate our deep past. What does the evidence show about early human societies? How sophisticated were they? And are there any real anomalies that conventional archaeology struggles to explain? But for now, let these thoughts settle. Feel yourself sinking deeper into relaxation. The Earth has weathered billions of years of change. Your worries, your concerns, they can rest for tonight. Just breathe, relax, and let yourself drift. What archaeology actually tells us. Let your mind settle into a peaceful state as we explore what scientists have actually discovered about our ancient past. This is where speculation meets evidence, where we can examine what we truly know rather than what we imagine might be true. The archaeological record of human development is extensive and growing richer every year. While there are gaps and mysteries, the overall picture is remarkably detailed. Let's walk through what we know, starting from the deep past and moving forward towards civilization as we recognize it. The earliest stone tools date back about 3.3 million years, predating the genus Homo entirely. They were made by earlier hominins, probably Australopithecus, and consist of simple flaked stones used for cutting and scraping. Over the next millions of years, tool technology gradually became more sophisticated. Homo erectus, appearing about 2 million years ago, developed more refined hand axes and learned to control fire. This was revolutionary. Fire provided warmth, protection from predators, the ability to cook food, and social gathering points. But even with fire, Homo erectus lived in small groups, made simple tools, and left no evidence of symbolic thought, art, or complex social structures. Homo sapiens emerged in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago. For the first 200,000 years of our existence, we remained in Africa, living as hunter-gatherers, slowly developing more sophisticated tools and behaviors. Around 70,000 years ago, a small population of Homo sapiens left Africa and gradually spread across the world. This dispersal was slow by modern standards. It took tens of thousands of years for humans to reach Australia, Europe, and eventually the Americas. But it was remarkably successful. By 15,000 years ago, humans had reached nearly every habitable region on Earth, except for remote islands. Throughout this long period, humans lived in small, mobile groups. They hunted, gathered, fished, and followed seasonal patterns of resource availability. They developed sophisticated knowledge of their environments, understanding animal behavior, plant properties, weather patterns, and landscape features. But they didn't build permanent structures, didn't domesticate plants or animals, didn't develop writing or mathematics. Then, starting around 12,000 years ago, something changed. Independently in several regions, people began to cultivate plants and domesticate animals. This was the Neolithic Revolution, the birth of agriculture. Why did this happen when it did, after hundreds of thousands of years of hunting and gathering? The most likely answer relates to climate. The end of the Ice Age and the beginning of the stable Holocene climate created favorable conditions for agriculture. Wild grains became more abundant and predictable. Populations may have grown to levels where hunting and gathering alone couldn't support them. Whatever the causes, agriculture transformed human society. Farming produced food surpluses, allowing some people to specialize in other activities. This led to craft specialization, trade, social stratification, and eventually cities, writing, and the complex societies we call civilizations. This transition wasn't instantaneous. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating to around 9,500 BCE, shows that monumental architecture preceded agriculture. This massive site features carved stone pillars arranged in circles, some weighing up to 20 tons. It was built by hunter-gatherers, not farmers, challenging our assumptions about the social organization required for such projects. Göbekli Tepe is fascinating because it doesn't fit neatly into the old narrative. First agriculture, then settlements, then specialized labor, then monuments. Instead, it suggests hunter-gatherers were capable of organizing large-scale construction projects, possibly for religious or social purposes, even before developing agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe doesn't suggest an advanced civilization. The site shows no evidence of writing, metallurgy, or complex technology. It's an impressive monument built with stone tools, manual labor, and social coordination. Remarkable, but not anomalous once we accept that pre-agricultural societies could be more sophisticated than we previously thought. By 8000 BCE, true agricultural settlements appeared in the Fertile Crescent. Jericho emerged as one of the earliest towns, with stone walls and towers. Çatalhöyük in Turkey grew to perhaps 10,000 inhabitants by 7000 BCE, making it one of the largest Neolithic settlements. These early towns show increasing sophistication, houses with multiple rooms, shrines, and art, evidence of trade networks stretching hundreds of miles. skilled crafts including pottery and weaving, but still no writing, no bronze or iron, no wheeled vehicles, no complex mathematics. Metallurgy developed gradually. Copperworking began around 7000 BCE in the Near East, initially just hammering native copper into shapes. Smelting copper from ores came later, around 5500 BCE. Bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, appeared around 3300 BCE, ushering in the Bronze Age. Iron smelting developed around 1200 BCE. Writing emerged in Mesopotamia around 3400 BCE, initially as a simple accounting system using pictographs pressed into clay tablets. Over centuries, it evolved into cuneiform, capable of expressing complex ideas. Egyptian hieroglyphics appeared shortly after, followed by writing systems in the Indus Valley, China, and eventually Mesoamerica. The development of writing marked a fundamental transition. Now, knowledge could be recorded, stored, and transmitted across generations without relying on human memory. Laws could be codified, history could be recorded, technical knowledge could be preserved in detail. The first true civilizations, Mesopotamian city-states, Old Kingdom Egypt, the Indus Valley Civilization, appeared around 3000 BCE. These societies had all the markers we associate with civilization: cities, specialized labor, social hierarchies, monumental architecture, writing, mathematics, bronze technology, long-distance trade. From that point forward, the archaeological record becomes increasingly detailed. We can trace the rise and fall of empires, the development of technologies, the spread of ideas and innovations. There are still mysteries and gaps, but the overall narrative is clear and supported by extensive evidence. So, where does this leave the question of earlier civilizations? The archaeological evidence shows a gradual development from simple hunter-gatherers to complex civilizations over many thousands of years. There are no sudden leaps, no inexplicable gaps, suggesting lost advanced civilizations transferred their knowledge. Yes, Göbekli Tepe surprises us, but it doesn't require rewriting human history. It just shows that pre-agricultural societies were more sophisticated than we thought. Yes, ancient engineering impresses us, but it doesn't require lost technology. Just patient labor, clever techniques, and skills developed over generations. The sites and artifacts that seem anomalous can usually be explained within the conventional framework once we discard assumptions about what ancient peoples could or couldn't do. They were as intelligent as we are. Given enough time, motivation, and accumulated knowledge, they achieved remarkable things. But, and this is important, the archaeological record is incomplete. We've excavated only a tiny fraction of ancient sites. Vast areas remain unexplored. Underwater archaeology is in its infancy. Sites on continental shelves, now submerged, are largely unknown. Tropical sites, where organic materials decay rapidly, preserve less evidence than arid or frozen sites. So, while we can say confidently that the archaeological evidence doesn't support the existence of advanced Ice Age civilizations, we can't say with absolute certainty that none existed. We can say only that if they did exist, they left no clear evidence that we've found yet. This might seem like a cop-out, but it's intellectually honest. Science deals in evidence and probabilities, not absolute certainties. The evidence we have points toward gradual development. The absence of evidence for alternative scenarios is significant. But absence of evidence is not proof of impossibility, especially when the preservation of evidence is so dependent on environmental conditions and the completeness of our search. As you rest here, breathing slowly and deeply, consider the difference between what we know, what we suspect, and what we imagine. Science builds knowledge through careful accumulation of evidence, testing of hypotheses, and revision of theories when new evidence emerges. The current understanding of human prehistory might be incomplete, but it's based on hundreds of thousands of artifacts, thousands of excavated sites, decades of careful research by thousands of scholars. It's not perfect, but it's the best explanation we have for the evidence available. When new evidence emerges that doesn't fit current models, good scientists pay attention. They investigate, analyze, and if necessary, revise their understanding. That's how Göbekli Tepe changed our view of Neolithic societies. That's how the Antikythera mechanism revealed Greek engineering was more sophisticated than we knew. Science is self-correcting. If clear evidence of an advanced Ice Age civilization emerges, it will be investigated and incorporated into our understanding. Until then, we work with what we have, a detailed picture of gradual human development, punctuated by innovations and adaptations, leading to the diverse civilizations of recorded history. In the next section, we'll examine specific claims about advanced ancient technology and see how they hold up to scrutiny. We'll look at the evidence for ancient electricity, ancient flight, ancient precision machining, and other controversial topics. We'll try to separate what's plausible from what's wishful thinking, but that's for later. For now, just rest. Let your body relax completely. The questions will still be there tomorrow. Tonight, they can fade into the background as you drift toward peaceful sleep. Claims of ancient technology, breathe deeply and let yourself remain in a state of calm relaxation as we examine some of the most provocative claims about ancient technology. These are ideas that appear in documentaries and books, capturing imaginations, but often lacking rigorous evidence. Let's explore them with open minds but critical thinking. One persistent claim involves ancient flight. Proponents point to various artifacts and images suggesting ancient peoples had access to flying machines, or at least understood the principles of flight. In a tomb at Saqqara, Egypt, archaeologists found a wooden object that some have interpreted as a model airplane. It has wings, a body, and a vertical tail fin. It dates to approximately 200 BCE. Those who believe it represents ancient flight knowledge note that it resembles a modern glider, and argue it might have been a scale model of a larger flying machine. Skeptics counter that the object looks equally like a bird or a weather vane. The wings are straight, unlike bird wings, but they're also simpler than functional aircraft wings would need to be. When tested, replicas don't fly particularly well without modification. The most likely explanation is that it's a stylized bird figure or votive offering, not a model of a flying machine. In Central America, small gold figures from pre-Columbian cultures have been interpreted by some as representing aircraft. These figures, called golden flyers, have triangular wings, vertical tail fins, and streamlined bodies. They look, to modern eyes, rather like delta-wing jets. But they also look like flying fish, birds, or insects, creatures ancient peoples would have been very familiar with. The fact that they resemble modern aircraft might say more about our modern perspective than about ancient knowledge. We see what we expect to see, interpreting ambiguous ancient art through the lens of our own technology. Without clear evidence of actual flight technology, no runways, no fuel systems, no materials suitable for aircraft construction, no contemporary texts describing flight, these figurines remain ambiguous. They're beautiful artifacts, but they don't prove ancient flight. Another claim involves ancient electricity and electric lighting. We discussed the Baghdad battery earlier, but some researchers go further, suggesting that ancient civilizations had sophisticated understanding of electricity and even electric lights. The Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt contains reliefs that some interpret as depicting light bulbs. The carvings show large, bulb-shaped objects with wavy lines inside, supported by pillars and connected to what might be cables. To modern eyes familiar with light bulbs, the resemblance is striking. Egyptologists interpret these images differently. They see depictions of the Dajjed pillar, a symbol of stability, combined with lotus flowers from which the sun god emerges, a common motif in Egyptian religious art. The bulbs are lotus blossoms. The filaments are snakes representing the god emerging from the flower. It's symbolic religious art, not technical diagrams. Could the Egyptians have had electric lights? To do so, they'd need several things. A power source, batteries far more sophisticated than the Baghdad battery, conducting wires, copper wire, which they had but properly insulated, and functional light bulbs, requiring glass technology and understanding of inert gases or vacuum. There's no evidence they had these things. No electrical wiring has been found in tombs or temples. No glass bulbs, no generating equipment. The proposed light bulbs would have required a technological infrastructure that would have left clear archaeological traces, yet none exists. The conventional explanation for how Egyptians illuminated the interiors of tombs and temples is simpler: oil lamps, torches, and mirrors to reflect sunlight into interior spaces. These methods work well and require only technologies we know ancient Egyptians possessed. Some point out that there's little soot on the ceilings of some Egyptian tombs, arguing that oil lamps and torches would have left soot deposits. This is true but can be explained. Perhaps they used mirrors and reflected light primarily, or used high-quality oils that burned more cleanly, or the soot accumulated but was cleaned off periodically, or has since been removed by erosion and cleaning. The absence of soot is interesting, but doesn't prove electric lighting when all other evidence for such technology is absent. Let's turn now to claims of ancient precision machining. Some granite vessels and artifacts in Egypt show remarkable precision and symmetry. Stone vases with walls of uniform thickness, perfectly symmetrical curves, and narrow necks that make it difficult to reach inside to carve the interior. Researcher Christopher Dunn has argued that some of these artifacts show evidence of machine tooling, specifically lathe work. He points to precise symmetry, uniform wall thickness, and tool marks that he interprets as inconsistent with manual carving. Could ancient Egyptians have had lathes? Actually, yes. Simple bow lathes operated by pulling a cord back and forth are ancient technology. They're documented in Egypt and could have been used to shape stone vessels by rotating them while applying an abrasive. The question is whether the precision we see requires modern powered lathes or could have been achieved with ancient tools and techniques. Experimental archaeology has shown that skilled craftspeople using simple tools and patient work can achieve remarkable precision. The key is time and skill, resources ancient craftspeople had in abundance. However, some granite boxes in Egypt, particularly those at Saqqara, show precision that even modern skeptics find impressive. The surfaces are extremely flat. The corners are sharp and square. The dimensions are consistent. Some researchers have measured these boxes and found flatness within a few thousandths of an inch across several feet. This is remarkable precision, no doubt. The question is, does it require lost technology or just extreme patience and skill? Modern stone craftspeople attempting to replicate these boxes have found the work challenging but possible with hand tools. The key is understanding that ancient craftspeople might have spent months or even years on a single box. We're used to modern manufacturing timelines, but ancient Egypt operated on very different timescales. Moreover, we might be seeing survivor bias. Perhaps hundreds of boxes were made, but only the most precisely crafted ones were deemed suitable for their purpose, whatever that was, and have survived. The less precise ones might have been rejected, reused, or simply haven't survived. Still, the precision is undeniably impressive and shows that ancient Egyptian stonemasonry was highly developed. Whether it requires explaining through lost technology or simply through acknowledging ancient skill is a matter of interpretation. Now, let yourself relax even more deeply as we consider claims about ancient atomic knowledge. Some ancient texts contain passages that have been interpreted as describing nuclear weapons or atomic warfare. The Mahabharata, an ancient Indian epic, describes powerful weapons with destructive effects that some have compared to nuclear explosions. Bright light, shock waves, radiation-like burns, people and animals dying days later. Could these be descriptions of ancient atomic weapons? The conventional interpretation is that these are poetic exaggerations of conventional weapons or natural phenomena, like lightning and meteors, embellished through epic storytelling. Ancient epics routinely describe gods and heroes wielding weapons of enormous power. The weapons in the Mahabharata are wielded by gods and demigods, suggesting mythological rather than literal technological descriptions. Moreover, nuclear weapons require an extensive technological and scientific infrastructure. Uranium enrichment or plutonium production, precision engineering, electronics, delivery systems, and deep understanding of nuclear physics. Such an infrastructure would leave undeniable traces in the archaeological and geological record. We find no such traces. Some point to areas of fused sand or glass in certain deserts, arguing these were created by ancient nuclear explosions. However, these formations are readily explained by lightning strikes, which create fulgurites, or by natural processes. Nuclear explosions leave distinctive isotopic signatures that persist for long periods. These signatures are absent from the supposed ancient nuclear sites. The evidence for ancient nuclear technology is essentially non-existent. The textual descriptions are better explained as mythology and poetic embellishment. The physical evidence either doesn't exist or has conventional explanations. Let's consider one more category: ancient maps showing impossible knowledge. We mentioned the Piri Reis map earlier. Another frequently cited example is the Orontes Phineas map of 1531, which supposedly shows Antarctica with accurate continental outlines beneath the ice. Proponents argue these maps must be based on very ancient source maps from when Antarctica was ice-free, implying sophisticated ancient cartography and perhaps ancient global civilization. Cartographers and historians see these maps differently. Renaissance maps often contain speculative geography. Mapmakers would combine known information with educated guesses and artistic imagination to fill in blank spaces. The supposed Antarctic coastlines on these maps don't actually match the real Antarctic coastline very well. They match if you squint and ignore the discrepancies, but detailed comparison shows significant differences. Moreover, Antarctica has been ice-covered for millions of years. For these maps to show ice-free Antarctica, they'd have to be based on sources millions of years old, long before humans existed. This creates an obvious logical problem. The simpler explanation is that these maps show mapmakers' best guesses about southern geography, combined with artistic license and errors in projection and copying. The resemblance to Antarctica is coincidental, or the result of people seeing what they want to see in ambiguous historical documents. As you breathe slowly and deeply, letting these thoughts wash over you, consider what all these claims have in common. They take genuine ancient artifacts or texts and interpret them through the lens of modern technology. We see aircraft because we have aircraft. We see light bulbs because we have light bulbs. We see atomic weapons because we have atomic weapons. This is called pareidolia in visual terms, or more broadly, projection. We project our modern understanding onto ancient materials, finding modern technology where ancient peoples might have seen something entirely different. This doesn't mean ancient peoples weren't sophisticated. They were highly intelligent, skilled, and knowledgeable about their world. But their knowledge was different from ours. They understood stone carving, astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, and social organization deeply. They achieved remarkable things with the tools and knowledge they had. We do them a disservice when we attribute their achievements to lost super technology or ancient aliens. It implies they couldn't have accomplished what they did on their own, which is both condescending and factually wrong. Ancient peoples were entirely capable of building the pyramids, carving the stone boxes, creating beautiful gold figurines, and writing epic poetry about destructive weapons. The romantic idea of lost advanced civilizations is appealing. It suggests there are great mysteries still to uncover, that history is stranger and more wonderful than we know. And there are mysteries in our past, genuine questions we haven't answered. But we should be careful not to create mysteries where none exist or to see technology that isn't there. In the next section, we'll explore what might actually have been lost. Not super technology, but more prosaic yet still valuable knowledge and capabilities that ancient peoples possessed and we've had to rediscover. Because there are genuine losses in the historical record, even if they're not as dramatic as some claim. But for now, just rest. Let your breathing slow. Feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort. The questions can wait. Sleep is calling gently, and you can let yourself answer that call. What was actually lost? Continue breathing slowly, evenly, letting yourself drift deeper into relaxation as we explore the genuine knowledge and capabilities that have been lost from the ancient world. Not fantastic technology, but real, practical understanding that took centuries to develop and mere generations to lose. We've already mentioned some examples: Roman concrete, Damascus steel, Greek fire, but the list of lost knowledge is longer and more significant than these famous examples might suggest. Let's explore what this teaches us about the fragility of human knowledge. Ancient mariners navigated vast distances without compasses, GPS, or detailed charts. Polynesian voyagers crossed thousands of miles of open ocean, finding tiny islands in the vastness of the Pacific, using only their understanding of stars, wave patterns, bird behavior, and cloud formations. This knowledge was transmitted orally through teaching and practice from master navigators to students. Much of this knowledge has been lost. When Western contact disrupted traditional societies, when modern navigation technology made traditional methods obsolete, when elders died before teaching the next generation, the knowledge vanished. In recent decades, there's been an effort to recover and preserve traditional Pacific navigation, but much is gone forever. The ancient Greeks understood the principles of steam power. Hero of Alexandria, in the 1st century CE, described a device called an aeolipile, a hollow sphere that would spin when steam was forced through bent tubes on its surface. It was a toy, a demonstration of principles, not a practical engine. But it shows the Greeks understood that steam could produce motion. Yet this knowledge led nowhere. The Greeks didn't develop steam engines, didn't create an industrial revolution. Why not? Various explanations have been proposed. Abundant slave labor made labor-saving devices less valuable. The technology wasn't mature enough for practical applications. The social and economic conditions weren't right for industrialization. Whatever the reason, the knowledge existed but wasn't developed into transformative technology. When ancient learning declined in Europe during the early medieval period, much Greek scientific knowledge was lost to the West. It survived in the Islamic world, where scholars preserved, translated, and built upon Greek texts. Centuries later, these texts were reintroduced to Europe through translation from Arabic, helping spark the Renaissance. What if those texts hadn't survived in the Islamic world? What if they'd been completely lost? We'd have had to rediscover everything through observation and experimentation, potentially adding centuries to the development of modern science. The Library of Alexandria's destruction, gradual though it was, represents an incalculable loss. We have titles and fragments of texts that were held there, tantalizing hints of lost knowledge. Plays by Sophocles we'll never read. Scientific treatises by scholars we know only by name. Historical accounts of events now lost to time. Some of what was lost has been partly reconstructed through other sources or through independent rediscovery, but some is simply gone. We'll never know what unique insights those texts contained, what observations of the ancient world, what philosophical arguments, what scientific understanding. Consider medicine. Ancient peoples developed extensive pharmacological knowledge through trial and error over countless generations. They knew which plants could reduce fever, ease pain, prevent infection, or induce sleep. Some of this knowledge was recorded in texts and has survived, but much was passed down orally, held by healers and wise women and shamans. And when those people died, or when their traditions were suppressed, the knowledge died with them. Modern pharmacology has rediscovered many of these remedies through scientific study of traditional plants. Willow bark contains salicylic acid, the basis for aspirin. The Pacific yew tree produces Taxol, a powerful cancer drug. The Madagascar periwinkle provides compounds used in chemotherapy. In each case, modern science validated and refined traditional knowledge. But how many other valuable medicinal plants were known to ancient peoples but have been forgotten? How many remedies were lost when traditional societies were disrupted, when rainforests were cleared, when cultural transmission was broken? Ancient agricultural knowledge represents another area of loss. Traditional farmers understood their land intimately: soil conditions, microclimates, water patterns, pest cycles. They practiced crop rotation, composting, and integrated pest management long before these became modern agricultural terms. They developed thousands of varieties of crops, each adapted to specific local conditions. The rise of modern industrial agriculture has replaced much of this diversity with monocultures. Ancient grain varieties, vegetable cultivars, and fruit species have gone extinct. The knowledge of how to grow and use them has been lost. Genetic diversity in our food crops has dramatically decreased, making agriculture more vulnerable to diseases and climate change. Some organizations are working to preserve heirloom varieties and traditional agricultural knowledge, but much has already been lost. Ancient farmers might have had solutions to agricultural challenges we're now facing, but we'll never know. In architecture and engineering, ancient peoples sometimes achieved results that we find difficult to replicate. not because they had lost super technology, but because they had specific skills, techniques, and organizational methods that weren't recorded and have been forgotten. The massive stone heads of Easter Island were carved and transported across the island using techniques that are still debated. Modern experiments have shown various possible methods, but we don't know exactly which techniques the Rapa Nui people actually used. The knowledge died with their civilization. The acoustic properties of ancient Greek theaters are remarkable. Voices from the stage carry clearly to the back rows, even though the theaters hold thousands of people. Modern architects studying these theaters have gained insights into acoustic design. But the original builders' complete understanding of how sound behaves in these spaces may have been more sophisticated than we realize. Medieval Gothic cathedral builders possessed extraordinary understanding of structural engineering. They built soaring spaces with walls of glass, distributing weight through flying buttresses and ribbed vaults. Much of this knowledge was held by master masons and transmitted through apprenticeship. Some was written down, but much was practical, hands-on knowledge that's difficult to capture in text. When the era of Gothic cathedral building ended, some techniques were lost. Modern restoration of Gothic cathedrals sometimes requires relearning medieval methods through experimentation and study of existing structures. Ancient textiles represent another area of lost expertise. Andean weavers created fabrics with thread counts rivaling modern fine fabrics. Using only backstrap looms, they achieved color combinations and patterns of extraordinary complexity. While some traditional weaving continues, many specific techniques have been lost. The famous Tyrian purple dye, made from sea snails and prized in the ancient world, was so valuable that wearing it was restricted to royalty. The specific process for extracting and preparing the dye was a closely guarded secret. When the industry collapsed, the detailed knowledge was lost. Modern recreations of Tyrian purple are based on chemical analysis and experimentation, but we may not have exactly replicated the ancient process. These examples share common themes. Knowledge can be lost when it's held by specialists who die without teaching others. Economic or social changes make it obsolete. Written records are destroyed or degrade. Cultural transmission is disrupted by conquest, disease, or social upheaval. The context for the knowledge disappears. The materials, tools, or social structures that made it relevant, the losses aren't necessarily permanent. Sometimes knowledge is rediscovered through archaeology, experimental reconstruction, or independent innovation. But the rediscovery often takes a very long time and may not perfectly replicate what was lost. This fragility of knowledge should make us humble. We assume that progress is linear, that knowledge once gained is never lost. But history shows otherwise. Knowledge must be actively maintained, taught, and practiced, or it fades away. As you rest here, breathing slowly, consider what knowledge of our own time might be lost in future ages. If our civilization faced catastrophic disruption, what would survive? Digital records are fragile, dependent on electricity, functioning hardware, compatible software. In many ways, our information storage is less durable than ancient clay tablets or parchment. Specialized knowledge in our society is often held by small numbers of experts. If those experts were suddenly unavailable, could we recreate their expertise? How much do any of us really understand about the technology we use daily? This isn't meant to be alarming or distressing, just thought-provoking as you drift towards sleep. Knowledge is precious and fragile. Each generation must learn from the previous one and add its own insights. When that chain is broken, humanity must begin again, rediscovering what was lost. The good news is that humans are excellent at rediscovery. We're curious, innovative, and persistent. What's lost can often be found again, sometimes in new and better forms. But the process takes time, and there are no guarantees. In the next section, we'll explore one of the most intriguing questions. Could there be undiscovered ruins waiting to be found? Are there ancient sites still hidden beneath jungles, deserts, or oceans that might change our understanding of the past? And what does modern technology tell us about the possibility of hidden civilizations? But there's no urgency to answer these questions now. Just let yourself relax, feel the comfort of rest. Let your thoughts drift like clouds across a peaceful sky. The undiscovered country. Breathe gently and easily as we explore the unknown spaces of our planet. the places where ancient secrets might still hide, waiting for discovery. Let yourself remain in deep relaxation as we consider what might yet be found. Despite centuries of exploration and archaeology, much of Earth remains unexamined in detail. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface, and we've explored less than 5% of the ocean floor. Vast areas of tropical rainforest remain largely unexplored. Deserts hide secrets beneath shifting sands. Even well-studied regions occasionally yield surprising discoveries. In 2018, archaeologists using aerial LiDAR, light detection and ranging, technology discovered a massive ancient Mayan city hidden beneath the jungle canopy of Guatemala. The city contained tens of thousands of structures, including pyramids, palaces, and defensive fortifications. It had been there all along, invisible beneath the dense vegetation, waiting for technology to reveal it. LiDAR works by shooting laser pulses from aircraft and measuring how long they take to bounce back. This creates detailed three-dimensional maps of the ground surface, penetrating vegetation that would completely obscure structures from normal aerial photography. It's revolutionizing archaeology, revealing ancient sites that were hidden in plain sight. Using LiDAR in Central America, researchers have found extensive urban complexes, sophisticated agricultural systems, and road networks connecting ancient cities. These discoveries are rewriting our understanding of Mayan civilization, showing it was far more extensive and sophisticated than previously believed. If the jungle could hide such massive sites until the 21st century, what else might be out there? In Southeast Asia, the lost city of Mahendraparvata in Cambodia was discovered using LiDAR in 2013. The city predates the famous Angkor Wat and shows sophisticated urban planning with temples, reservoirs, and roads. It had been lost for centuries, its ruins covered by jungle. The Amazon rainforest likely holds countless undiscovered sites. The forest was long thought to have been sparsely populated before European contact, but recent archaeology suggests otherwise. Evidence of large earthworks, geometric patterns, and agricultural modifications indicates the Amazon supported significant populations who managed the forest extensively. These discoveries don't suggest advanced lost civilizations in the sense of high technology, but they do show that our picture of pre-Columbian Americas was incomplete. Populations were larger and more sophisticated than we thought. Their environmental impact was more extensive. Their engineering capabilities were impressive. What else is hiding under the Amazon canopy? We don't know, but LiDAR surveys are beginning to reveal the possibilities. Some researchers believe there could be significant urban sites still undiscovered, masked by centuries of jungle growth. Deserts hide secrets differently. Shifting sands can bury sites completely, then expose them centuries later. In Egypt, ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery are revealing structures beneath the sand. Entire lost cities like Tanis have been rediscovered after being buried for centuries. In Saudi Arabia, satellite imagery has revealed extensive networks of ancient stone structures called kites, used for hunting, and mysterious structures called wheels, whose purpose remains unclear. These structures are so large they're only visible from the air, explaining why they went unnoticed for so long, despite being built thousands of years ago. The Sahara was not always a desert. During the African humid period, roughly 11,000 to 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was much wetter, with lakes, rivers, and grasslands. Humans and animals thrived in what is now barren desert. As the climate dried, populations had to migrate or adapt. Their settlements remain buried under sand. What cities, what artifacts, what evidence of ancient life might be preserved under the Sahara, waiting for someone to find them? It's an open question. Now, let your mind drift to the oceans, the largest unexplored territory on Earth. When sea levels were lower during the Ice Age, the continental shelves were dry land. Millions of square miles of coastline now submerged. Early humans naturally gravitated to coasts. Coastal areas offered marine resources, moderate climates, and trade routes. If there were significant human populations during the Ice Age, which there certainly were, many likely lived on what are now continental shelves. Those settlements are now underwater, buried under sediment, damaged by currents and shifting seafloor. Finding them is extraordinarily difficult. Underwater archaeology is expensive, time-consuming, and technically challenging. We've barely begun to explore these submerged landscapes. Some sites have been found. Doggerland, the area between Britain and continental Europe that was submerged when the North Sea formed, has yielded artifacts from Mesolithic peoples who lived there. These finds are rare and fragmentary, recovered mostly by accident when fishing trawlers dredge them up. Near India, structures off the coast of Gujarat have been investigated, with some researchers arguing they're remnants of ancient settlements. The evidence is debated, with some seeing natural formations and others seeing worked stone. In the Mediterranean, the ruins of ancient ports lie underwater, submerged by local sea level changes and tectonic activity. These are well-documented historical sites, showing that underwater ruins do exist and can be studied, but they date to historical times, within the past few thousand years. The deeper question is, are there older sites, from before recorded history, lying on continental shelves in deeper water? The answer is almost certainly yes. There were people living in those areas during the Ice Age. But finding their settlements, proving they were settlements, and extracting meaningful information from them is a monumental challenge. Most Ice Age settlements would have been simple, camps of hunter-gatherers, perhaps seasonal fishing villages, nothing that would leave dramatic ruins. These sites would be incredibly difficult to detect and interpret underwater. But could there be larger settlements, more sophisticated structures? We can't rule it out entirely. In Japan, the Yonaguni monument we discussed earlier remains controversial. Whether it's natural or artificial, it represents the challenges of underwater archaeology. Features that would be obviously artificial on land become ambiguous underwater, where erosion and geological processes create formations that can mimic human construction. Antarctica presents another frontier. The continent is covered by ice sheets up to 3 miles thick. Beneath that ice lies land, much of it below sea level due to the weight of the ice, but some of it high ground. Could there be anything of archaeological interest under Antarctic ice? Almost certainly not from human civilizations. Humans never reached Antarctica before modern times. The climate has been prohibitively cold for millions of years, long before humans evolved. But the idea persists in popular culture, perhaps because Antarctica is one of the last truly unexplored regions of Earth. What about hidden chambers and known structures? The Great Pyramid has been scanned using cosmic ray muon tomography, revealing previously unknown voids within its structure. These aren't vast chambers full of treasure, but they show that even intensively studied monuments can hold surprises. Other ancient sites might contain undiscovered chambers, texts, or artifacts. Each new discovery has the potential to enhance our understanding of ancient civilizations. But these discoveries, when they come, generally confirm rather than overturn our existing knowledge. The pattern is consistent. New discoveries expand and refine our understanding, but rarely require complete revision of the historical framework. Each new Mayan city revealed by LIDAR is exciting, but it fits within what we know about Mayan civilization. Each submerged artifact from Doggerland is interesting, but it shows us Mesolithic peoples living as we'd expect them to live. The truly revolutionary discovery, clear evidence of an advanced civilization where none was thought to exist, artifacts that demonstrate sophisticated technology thousands of years before it should exist, hasn't happened. Not because archaeologists aren't looking or aren't open to surprises, but because the evidence isn't there to be found. But the search continues. Technology improves. Remote sensing, LIDAR, ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, DNA analysis, and dating techniques get more sophisticated every year. We're finding new sites, recovering new artifacts, extracting new information from old discoveries. Each new find is exciting, not because it proves wild theories, but because it adds detail to the vast, complex story of human history. Every site gives us more information about how our ancestors lived, what they believed, what they built, and what they knew. As you breathe slowly and sink deeper into rest, imagine the feeling of discovery. Imagine brushing dirt away from an ancient artifact, seeing something no human has seen in thousands of years. Imagine using technology to reveal hidden structures, seeing the green screen of the LiDAR readout resolve into the walls of a lost city. These discoveries are happening. They'll continue to happen, and each one teaches us something new about our shared human past. The undiscovered country isn't just geographical, it's temporal, reaching back into the deep past, holding stories waiting to be told. What will we find in the coming decades? What sites still wait beneath jungle canopy, desert sand, or ocean waves? We don't know, but we keep looking, keep searching, keep refining our methods. Because understanding where we came from helps us understand who we are. In our final section, we'll bring these thoughts together, considering what all this exploration means. What does it tell us about human nature that we're so drawn to mysteries of the past? What do we gain from contemplating the possibility of lost civilizations? And what should we take away from this journey through ancient mysteries? But that's the last stop on our journey. For now, rest here in this moment. Feel yourself drifting, comfortable, and relaxed. The mysteries will resolve in their own time, or they won't. And either way, you can rest peacefully, letting go of questions, letting go of curiosity, just for tonight. What we're really searching for. Let your breathing become even slower, even more relaxed as we come to the end of our journey through ancient mysteries. As you drift between waking and sleeping, consider what this exploration has really been about. When we ask whether we're the first civilization on Earth, we're asking something deeper than a simple historical question. We're asking about our place in the vast sweep of time. We're wondering whether we're alone in our human experience, or whether others before us face the same challenges, achieved similar accomplishments, perhaps even surpassed us in some ways. There's something humbling and comforting in the idea that we might not be the first. Humbling because it suggests our achievements, which seem so impressive to us, might be less unique than we imagine. Comforting because it suggests that if civilizations have risen before and fallen, perhaps the human story is more resilient, more persistent, more inevitable than we fear. We live in an age of rapid change and uncertainty. Climate change, technological disruption, social upheaval, the modern world can feel precarious. Looking back into the deep past, considering the possibility of earlier civilizations that rose and fell, might reflect our anxieties about our own civilization's stability. If others came before us and were lost, what happened to them? And more pressingly, could it happen to us? These are natural questions. Every civilization wonders about its own permanence. The Romans thought their empire would last forever. Medieval Europeans couldn't imagine a world without the Church's authority. Each age believes itself to be permanent until suddenly it isn't. Looking for lost civilizations is, in part, looking for reassurance or warning. If we can understand what destroyed previous civilizations, whether real or imagined, perhaps we can avoid their fate. Or perhaps we can accept that all things change. All civilizations eventually transform or end, and that's simply the nature of human society. But the search for lost civilizations is also about wonder. We're drawn to mystery. The idea that there might be secrets waiting to be discovered, that the past might be stranger than we know, appeals to our imagination. It makes the world more interesting, more full of possibility. In our modern age, where so much has been mapped, cataloged, and explained, mysteries are precious. They remind us that we don't know everything, that there are still questions without answers, that the universe can still surprise us. The ancient monuments and artifacts we've discussed, the pyramids, the precision stonework, the sophisticated astronomical knowledge, these are genuinely mysterious in the sense that we don't fully understand how they were achieved with the tools and methods we believe ancient peoples possessed. Not mysterious in the sense of requiring impossible explanations, but mysterious in the sense of demonstrating capabilities that impress us and challenge our assumptions. That's valuable. It keeps us humble. It reminds us that ancient peoples were as intelligent as we are, as creative, as capable of solving problems and achieving remarkable things. They were not primitive or simplistic. They were fully human, with all that implies. When we attribute their achievements to lost super-civilizations or ancient aliens, we're actually being disrespectful to their capabilities. We're saying they couldn't have done it themselves, which is both condescending and almost certainly wrong. Ancient peoples were entirely capable of moving large stones, carving precise shapes, building impressive structures, and understanding astronomical cycles. The real mystery isn't how they did these things. Patient labor, clever techniques, accumulated knowledge, and social organization explain most of it. The real mystery is more subtle. How did they develop these capabilities? What was the process of innovation? How was knowledge transmitted? What motivated them to undertake such ambitious projects? These questions are harder to answer, but more rewarding to explore. They're about human nature, culture, and society, rather than about technology. And they don't have simple answers, which makes them genuinely mysterious. As you rest here, deeply relaxed, consider what draws you personally to questions about ancient mysteries. Is it wonder? Is it the desire to believe the world is more mysterious than it seems? Is it skepticism toward official narratives? Is it simply curiosity about the past? All these motivations are valid. Being curious about history, questioning assumptions, and maintaining a sense of wonder are good things. They keep us engaged with the world, keep us learning and growing. The key is balancing open-minded curiosity with critical thinking. We can be fascinated by ancient mysteries while still demanding good evidence before accepting extraordinary claims. We can appreciate the accomplishments of ancient peoples without needing to attribute them to lost super-civilizations. We can find wonder in what we know while acknowledging the limits of our knowledge. The past is genuinely mysterious. There are real questions we haven't answered. There are sites we haven't found. There's knowledge we've lost. The story of human civilization is still being written as new discoveries are made and new interpretations are proposed. But the mystery is richer and more interesting when we approach it honestly. The real story of human development, gradual, uneven, full of innovation and loss, achievement and failure, is more compelling than simplified narratives of lost super-civilizations. Our ancestors were remarkable. They domesticated plants and animals, invented agriculture, developed writing and mathematics, built cities and monuments, created art and literature, observed the heavens, and developed sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles. They did all this through intelligence, creativity, and persistence. That's the real wonder. Not that they might have had access to lost technology, but that they achieved what they did with the tools and knowledge they had. Humans are capable of extraordinary things. We always have been. As you drift closer to sleep now, take that thought with you. You're part of a long chain of human achievement stretching back tens of thousands of years. Your ancestors survived ice ages, migrations, disasters, and challenges we can barely imagine. They developed knowledge, built societies, raised children, and passed on their learning. That chain connects you to the deep past. The same intelligence that built the pyramids, that carved the stone boxes, that navigated by stars, that intelligence is in you. The capacity for wonder, for questioning, for seeking understanding, that's your inheritance from countless generations of curious humans. Whether or not earlier civilizations rose and fell before recorded history, the human story is one of resilience and adaptability. We've faced catastrophes before. We've lost knowledge and rebuilt it. We've started over and created new wonders. That capacity for renewal, for learning, for pushing forward even after setbacks. That's what defines us. So, rest easy tonight. The mysteries of the past will still be there tomorrow. The questions will wait while you sleep. And when you wake, you'll be part of the ongoing human story, adding your own small contribution to the vast accumulation of human knowledge and experience. Let yourself drift now. Let these thoughts fade into dreams. Feel yourself sinking into deep, peaceful sleep. The journey through ancient mysteries has ended for tonight. Tomorrow is time enough to wonder about what was, what might have been, and what might yet be discovered. For now, just breathe, just rest, just sleep. The ancient world is quiet tonight. The pyramids stand under starlight, as they have for thousands of years. The ocean waves roll over submerged coastlines, keeping their secrets. The desert sand shifts in the wind, revealing and concealing the past in equal measure. And you, here in the present moment, can let all of it go. Let the questions rest. Let the mysteries remain mysterious. Let yourself simply be, here and now, drifting in the gentle space between curiosity and contentment. Sleep comes naturally, inevitably, like the turning of seasons or the cycling of the moon. You don't need to search for it or force it. It finds you, as it has found countless humans before you, as it will find countless more after you. In sleep, Perhaps you'll dream of ancient cities and forgotten knowledge. Perhaps you'll walk through temples long fallen to ruin. Perhaps you'll see the world as it was thousands of years ago, green and full of life in places now desert, covered by ocean in places now dry land. Or perhaps you'll simply rest deeply and peacefully, giving your mind and body the restoration they need. Either way, it's perfect. Either way, you're exactly where you should be. The question of whether we're the first civilization on Earth remains open, in a sense. Not in the sense that evidence supports alternative histories, but in the sense that the past always holds more than we currently know. Each generation discovers something new, adds something to our understanding, revises something we thought we knew. That's the beauty of history and archaeology. They're not fixed, dead subjects, but living fields of inquiry, constantly evolving as new evidence emerges and new interpretations are proposed. What we believe today about the past might be refined or revised tomorrow. That's not a weakness, it's a strength. It's how knowledge grows. So, if the question interests you, follow it, read widely, look at evidence from multiple perspectives, visit ancient sites if you can, support archaeological research, maintain your sense of wonder while developing your critical thinking skills. Be open to mystery while being skeptical of unfounded claims. The past deserves our attention, our respect, and our honest inquiry. Our ancestors deserve to be understood as they were, not as projections of our fantasies or fears. And we deserve to know our true history, in all its complexity and richness. But tonight, these considerations can fade away. Tonight, you need only rest. The ancient world has stood for thousands of years. It will stand a while longer while you sleep. The mysteries have waited through countless nights. They can wait through one more. Your breathing is slow now, steady and peaceful. Your body is completely relaxed, sinking into comfort. Your mind is quiet, thoughts drifting like leaves on a gentle stream. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to figure out. Just this moment, just this breath, just this peaceful descent into sleep. The ancient stones rest in the earth. The stars wheel overhead as they have for billions of years. The planet turns through space, carrying you and all of humanity on its patient journey around the sun. You're part of it all, connected to deep time and deep space, part of the vast unfolding story of the universe. And in this moment, that story asks nothing of you except that you rest, that you let go, that you trust in sleep to do its work, restoring you for whatever tomorrow brings. So let go now. Let yourself drift. Feel yourself floating, weightless and peaceful, into the darkness that heals and renews. The ancient mysteries will be there when you wake, if you want to think about them again. Or they won't, and that's fine too. All that matters now is this. You're safe, you're comfortable, you're ready for sleep. And sleep is ready for you, patient and welcoming. A natural rhythm as old as life itself. Breathe slowly. Feel yourself sinking deeper. Let your mind become quiet and still, like a pond on a windless night, reflecting starlight, perfectly peaceful. The ancient world sleeps too, in a sense. The monuments stand silent. The artifacts rest in museums and ruins. The evidence waits in the earth, patient, indifferent, holding its secrets until someone comes to read them. But that's not your concern tonight. Tonight, you join the long procession of humans who have laid down to rest, generation after generation, back through all the millennia we've been discussing. Sleep connects you to them, to this fundamental human need and experience that transcends culture, time, and technology. Rest well, sleep deeply, dream peacefully, or don't dream at all. Either way, let yourself be carried into the healing darkness of sleep, where questions dissolve and the mind finds restoration. The journey through ancient mysteries is complete for tonight. You've traveled through time, considered possibilities, examined evidence, and wondered about the deep past. It's been a long journey, and now it's time to rest. Let everything go now. Let all thoughts drift away like smoke. Feel yourself becoming lighter, floating, dissolving into sleep. There's nothing to hold on to, nothing to figure out. Just the gentle, inevitable descent into dreams. Good night. Rest well. The ancient world will still be there tomorrow, full of mysteries and wonders, waiting for those who wish to explore them. But tonight, you need only sleep. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Sleep well. The stars shine on ancient ruins and modern cities alike. The earth turns through the darkness of space, and you, part of this vast cosmos, part of the long human story, drift into sleep. Safe. Peaceful. Complete. Good night.